The Linux command line is not as scary as you might actually think. So in this video, I'm going to teach you on how to use this beautiful part of Linux, and let's get started. Right, but before we obviously get started, I highly recommend to launch some kind of Linux distro so you can also type in commands. In the description down below, there will be a link on how to install a virtual machine with Linux installed. So make sure to check that video out and get a Linux distribution for yourself, right? Go to your menu and make sure that you basically look for something called terminal. If you can't find it, type in terminal, and basically something like this with this icon should be displayed, right? Obviously it matters what kind of distribution you have. It might be slightly different, but just launch this because the commands are all the same on every single distribution. Okay, you can also actually make your terminal bigger. So if you can't see or you just want to make it bigger, if you come to edit or view, basically zoom in and zoom out. These are basically your keybinds or your buttons, right? Okay, so the first command I have for you is ls. This is one of the most basic commands that you can really get in Linux. And what it basically means is list files. And as you can see, what it does, it lists files in your current working directory. However, and also just a note, these are all folders, right? The color tells you that these are all folders. Okay, so what happens if I actually type in ls desktop, right? As you can see, it listed files inside my desktop, right? Or inside that folder. However, additional note, notice that I've wrote capital D. Why? Because Linux is case sensitive, right? So if something is literally with a capital ABC, you need to type in capital ABC. You cannot do it the other way. However, obviously, we're not going to type everything out by hand. So what we can actually do is we can use something called, I like to call it quick switching, but that's not the actual proper name. The proper name for this, or like the proper professional name, is autofilling, okay? So if you type in ls, and for example, let's start typing DE, right? As you can see, it autofills for us. But if I remove, just type in D, as you can see, it basically matches or looks for something that starts with D, and it gives you options, right? Because sometimes you might, this is actually useful for looking for stuff. I use this when I'm looking for something and I don't know the exact name or something, or I'm looking for something. I just do this and I can actually see stuff, right? Also, if you actually remove everything and you press tab, it actually shows you everything inside that folder, right? Or inside your directory. Just before we move on to another command, I just want to show you quickly something called switches, operators, options, and flags. People call them really different things, but basically you just need to understand what this means and what this does, right? So for example, when you type in ls, right, as you can see, it only shows you this, right? So it shows you files and folders, technically everything that's visible. But if you type in ls-la, right, so this is something called operators, flags, or switches. Some people, as I said, call them different things. So basically, if I type this in, as you can see, it actually gives us like a lot of stuff, right? It gives us like the files that we can't really see, because as you can see, this is my folder. And you can't really see, right? We can actually verify that this is the current directory because there's desktop, documents, downloads. Obviously this matches, but there's not a file like .hello, .face, .dmrc, .config, like there's no stuff like that. Why? If you put a dot in front of a file, it actually makes it hidden, right? So for example, we don't really need to see all of this, right? So they just made them a hidden file, right? But it is still a file, so we can actually I actually have a hidden file, right? So there's a .hello file. So if I type it cat.hello, as you can see, it actually shows us the output of the file, right? So it is just a normal file, but it's hidden, right? So ls-la, what it does, it basically shows you all files, including hidden files, okay? So this is important. So just a reminder, this is something called operators, switches, and flags. As I said, people will call them different things. Most common is flags and options. Okay, so let's actually do some folders and let's get some files inside those folders. So what you're gonna have to do is you're gonna have to cd into desktop, right? So go back to your directory and just go to desktop, or actually wherever you want. I recommend desktop because it allows you to see how the files are being created. Now, if you would like to go back a directory, all you have to do is type in cd and 2 dots, right? So if I actually go back to desktop and I type in cd 2 dots and /2 dots again, I'm going back 2 directories, right? So as you can see, we went from desktop to home, right? First command, mkdir. This allows you to create folders, right? And actually works on Windows as well. So if you want to create a folder on Windows, you use the same command, mkdir. As you can see, the folder has been created. Now, what I just want you to do is I just want you to go into that folder, right? So go to that folder you have just created. So cd and your name of that folder, okay? Once inside that folder, I want you to type in pwd, which stands for print working directory, okay? So as you can see, we get a path. So it says home curly desktop test folder. This path should be a bit familiar to you. It might be obviously different for you. This should be different. It should be your username. For me, it's Cali. For you, it might be a completely different username. That is absolutely fine. What you're just interested in is you're interested in copying this, okay? Copy this path and type in the following commands, okay? cd /, okay? Now you should be in the root. So if you type in pwd again, it should show you the root, okay? Now type in cd and copy the path you have just copied. No, this one, right, the wrong. This path, okay? Copy, paste, okay? cd home Kali desktop test folder, press enter. And if you type in pwd again, as you can see, we're back in the same directory we have just copied. You might ask, okay, what did we just do? We basically moved the root of Linux, and then we moved back to home Kali desktop test folder, okay? We basically have just moved folders. Now, the reason for me to show you this is that you can actually go to folders without like having access to them directly. You can actually go through any folder as long as the path is correct. So you can be in another folder and you can go to a completely different folder in the other end of the system by just knowing the path, okay? Okay, so now we know a little bit how to navigate around the Linux system. I actually want to show you how to edit files, how to add files, and much more. So go to your directory, right? You can actually do this anywhere, but I recommend doing this in a test folder or like in a folder so you can just delete it later on, just in case you make too many files or you type something in by accident and you just make a mess, right? Okay, so the first command I want to show you is you're going to type in nano, right? And then you're going to type in hello.txt, okay? So just copy what I've wrote. Press enter, and what you're going to get is you're going to get this, right? So it says GNU Nano. So Nano is basically a text editor, and it tells you the file here. It says hello.txt. At the bottom, you also get keys. I'm going to explain these in a sec. So this is a text editor, which means we can edit files, right? Or text files. So we can actually type in, for example, let's say hello. You can write something as well. I actually recommend writing something because we're going to learn another command in a second. At the bottom, you get switches or flags or options, right? Whatever you really want to call them. You get people calling these different things. So this is like help, and this is like an up arrow O, right? So basically what up arrow is control. So if you actually press Control X, okay, it says save modified buffer. Press Y, okay, and then it says file name to write, but basically this is just asking you, do you want to change the name of your file? We're not going to change it, so you're going to press enter. Type in ls, and as you can see, the file has appeared, right? If I actually open up the folder, as you can see, the file is right here. We can actually open it up, and as you can see, the contents of the file are right here. Cool, right? What we can actually do is we can display the contents of the file by typing cat, right? Cat is another command. Cat and then hello, right? I'm going to press tab here. As you can see, it displayed, it autofilled the file. I'm going to press enter. As you can see, it displayed the contents of the file, right? Cool and simple. I hope you guys actually like this, because I would say this is pretty cool, because with a command line, right, without access to a graphical user interface, we are able to add files, edit files, and display files. I would say this is amazing. There is actually two more ways that we can edit files, and I just want to show you them right now. So I'm going to show you the most simplest way. So you can actually launch any program as long as the name matches, right? So for example, let's say that we want to launch Mousepad. Now, Mousepad in Linux is basically a text editor. If I type in Firefox, yeah, so you can actually launch Firefox as well, right? So if I type in Firefox, as you can see, I launched a browser, right? So you can actually launch most of the programs as long as you know the launch name. So for example, if I want to edit a file, right? So if I'm going to do mousepad.hello, right? As you can see, I launched a text editor, right? A GUI, graphical user interface editor, by the command line, right? So if you basically put the mousepad or whatever other text editor you may have and the file name, this will basically launch a text editor with the file launched. So this is just a cool trick that you can also do just in case you want to edit something with a text editor, okay? Now, another thing I want to show you is something called echo. So if you're a Windows user, you might recognize echo, especially if you do some bat scripts on Windows. So echo is one of the most popular commands. But basically what echo does, echo is actually very, very useful because it allows you to echo, so basically copy something into a text file, right, without a text editor. So I'm going to show you how to do this now. So we're going to create a file. Now, echo actually creates a file for you. So if you don't have a file, echo will create a file for you, okay? So I'm going to show you how to use this right now. So if you type in echo, and you put in double quotation marks, so make sure you pick with double quotation marks, right? So make sure that you open and close. Let's type in hello world, right? Okay, and as you can see, it actually highlights what I've typed in earlier. So basically now, as you can see, I also put right arrow, and you might be confused. What is right arrow? Right arrow in Linux basically changes the contents of the file. So this is important that if you type this command, you don't do it to another file because you're going to overwrite or change the whole contents of the file. Especially if it's a configuration file, you can break your system. So this is very, very important that you know what you're typing in and you also verify what you're typing in. Okay, so I'm actually going to demonstrate. So I'm going to cut the file. As you can see, this is the contents of the file. Okay, I'm going to type the command again. As you can see, I just autofilled, right? What I've done is I've pressed a right arrow. So if you actually press down arrow, up arrow, it actually allows you to see your history, okay? So this is how you can see your history, up arrow and down arrow, okay? On your keyboard. Okay, so echo hello world and then the right arrow to dot hello. Now I'm gonna change the contents to just say like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay? I'm gonna cut the file again. And as you can see, I've modified the file completely. So as I said, it's very important that you know what you're typing in. But there is actually another operator, right? So if you actually use 2 arrows, what this does, it appends. So appends means adds, right? So just creates a new line and this will be added. So a new line, okay? And if I cut the file, as you can see, we have added the text. So 1 arrow changes the file, 2 arrows appends to the file, okay? I hope this is clear. So to copy files, what we can do is we can cp. So if you type in cp hello.txt, right? We can actually copy it, right? So if I type in hello2.txt, for example, right? And you type in ls, as you can see, we have basically copied the file, right? So basically the syntax of this is cp, the file, and the file that you want to copy it, like as, or the new file you want to call it as, okay? So if I type in cat hello2.txt, as you can see, it is the exact same file as hello.txt, okay? That would be, obviously now, actually, I'm going to show you one more thing, right? We can actually copy files to different folders without being into them, right? This might be a bit tricky for you to understand, first of all, but it is not that difficult once you actually understand it, right? Also, I'm just going to give you a quick note. Don't expect yourself to understand like all of this Linux command line within a day. It might take you like a week to properly understand everything, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to actually cp hello.txt and we're actually going to type in 2 dots, okay? What this is going to do is, as you just saw, I basically copied the file backwards, right? So backwards directory, so just going back a directory. So it's going back to the desktop, right? As you can see, the file right here is it's on our desktop, right? If you type in ls, as you can see, the file did not get moved. So we have successfully copied the actual file, okay? Another example of copying a file to another folder or basically somewhere else is, let's do cp hello.txt, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put home Kali, okay? And what if I press enter, the file basically got copied to my home directory, right? So as you can see, this is the file. So this is what I'm trying to teach you. So basically what you can do is you don't need to go to a directory to do stuff in it, right? It's actually very, very simple. As I said, once you understand, it's actually very, very simple. So what I've done here is I've copied the file to / home Kali, right? So to basically to my home directory, as you can see, it's right here, right? We can actually move stuff as well. So if I type in mv hello2.txt and I type in home Kali, right? And I type in ls, as you can see, the file is not here anymore. If I type in ls home Kali, the file is right here. Now mv actually is has 2 uses, okay? You can move stuff and you can rename stuff, right? I don't know why they actually kind of did that, but it makes no difference, right? So you can, with mv command, which means move, you can rename and you can move stuff, right? It just matters how you technically write the command and then allows you to do stuff. So as an example, let's say that I want to rename this file, right? I'm actually going to clear the screen. If you want to clear the screen, all you have to do is type in clear, okay? So I'm going to rename this file. I'm going to type in mv hello.txt and I'm going to type in today.txt, okay? And I'm going to press ls, and as you can see, the file has been renamed to today.txt. So mv, your file name, and your new file name, okay? I hope you guys understand. Okay, so I think that's it for like the beginner stuff. Now I just want to show you some administration stuff. So like becoming the root user or administrator user or using or updating your system and stuff like that, okay? So I'm going to show you a basic command. So the most basic command is sudo su, right? So basically, if you have permissions, this allows you to become the root user. Now, please don't do anything, don't touch anything, don't type any commands, because as the root user, you have elevated privileges. So sometimes a command may not ask you for permissions, it'll just do it. And this becomes a problem if you type in the wrong command and you're going to delete stuff, right? So as I said, you can break your system or you can delete important files, and you obviously don't want to do that. So don't type in any commands as the root. I'm just showing you this just in case you want to become a root user and you don't know how. So this is how you become a root user. Root user doesn't actually need any, like, it doesn't really ask for permission, it just does it, right? Because as I said, you're the elevated user. Now, I recommend you go back to the user. So the easiest way to do is just type in Kali or your username, okay? So for me, it's Kali. If whatever your username is here, you just need to type that in, okay? So and your username. Okay, so now you're back to your user. Now you don't have elevated privileges anymore and you're back to your normal user. Okay, now I'm going to show you some administration commands. So basically, one of the most useful commands is that you can actually update your system through the command line. And this is actually pretty cool. If you've never done this, it looks like basically you're hacking something, but you're not. You're going to find out that you're just basically updating something. So if you type in sudo apt update, and if you press shift and 7, now basically what you just need to do is get ampersand, okay? And then sudo apt full -upgrade -y. I'm going to break this down command very quickly. So basically sudo apt updates your repositories, and sudo apt full upgrade basically upgrades it, because in Linux, what you need to do is you need to update it and upgrade it. And -y is actually very useful. I'm going to show you this as well. So basically -y just says yes, because the sudo apt update is actually going to ask you if you want to upgrade your system, right? So if I press this command, if I type my password in, basically, as you can see, it's starting to update. Now, as I said, it looks like you're hacking something, but you're not. It's just basically you're updating your system, right? And because we have typed -y, as you can see, it's actually going to ask us here. I was actually going to ask us if you want to update, and because we have typed -y, it basically done everything for us, right? As you can see, it's starting to update, and if I go all the way down, it's just basically updating, right? So I'm actually going to let this run because I can't stop this. I highly recommend to not do anything while you're updating the system. Just let this run and it should be finished pretty quickly. Okay, now I'm going to show you how to install something basically from a documentation, right? As you can see, it says install with one command. Right, so basically what this does, it basically gets the installer and basically installs it, right? So I'm actually going to break this command. So if you actually copy this and you paste this into terminal, okay. So let me just break this command down, okay? So curl basically what it does, it sends the web request or HTTP request to download Brave and install sh. Now install sh basically is like an exe for Linux, okay? So basically it's shell, okay? And then this is something called pipe or a wall. And basically what this does, it basically executes it. So if I press enter, what this is going to do is basically going to install a Brave browser for us. So as you can see, it's done. So if I type in Brave browser, as you can see, it's gonna launch. Now, also very important, as you can see, anything that's actually highlighted by blue color, it means it's available to launch, right? So if I type in Firefox, I've showed you this before. If I type in Firefox, as you can see, it is highlighted blue, which means it's available. If I type in something like Hashcat, oh, Hashcat is available because this is Kali. But if I type in something like Tor, I don't know, Tor browser, I think. I can't remember, like, basically, if I type in something, as you can see, it's not available, right? Even though basically once you install it, it will be available with a blue color, right? So something just to be aware of. If something is highlighted blue, it's available, right? Also, if I close this terminal, the browser will close, right? So if I close this terminal, as you can see, that has been closed, right? So very important that if you have something important, don't close the terminals, okay? So I'm going to type in Brave browser again. And as you can see, now we have a fully working Brave browser. So if I go to Google, as you can see, it works, right? Very, very simple and something you need to know. Okay, and the final command for this episode will be sudo apt install, right? So as an example, let's type in sudo apt install htop, right? So basically what this is going to do, sudo apt install basically installs a program, just like similar to launching an exe file on Windows, right? Or an installer. It's basically going to install something called htop. Now what htop does, I'll show you in a second. As you can see, it's finished. Sometimes sudo apt may ask you if you want to install something. You just need to type in yes or press yes. I can't remember which one it is, but you just need to type in yes, okay? And basically if I type in htop now, as you can see, it launched my hardware information. So this actually tells you everything about your system. So processes, how much memory you have. As you can see, I only have 2 gigabytes of memory, and currently there is 500 being used. Also tells you how many tasks, tells you the uptime. So so basically this is just your system information and pretty useful stuff, right? Basically another command actually this would show you is ps, right? So ps actually shows you, if you type in ps-aux, actually shows you much more information, right? As you can see, it shows us processes. So basically these are the processes, and actually shows you, for example, Kali. So this is my user, this is what my user is running. Root is basically the system administrator, right?